all truths are equally valid. We listen with non-judgment and with beginner's mind, without resistance or planning what we will say. We listen without agenda. And we allow everyone the opportunity to speak at least once. And no one has to speak. You only speak if you choose to. And this is, Yael, this is a sharing circle, right? Because we're now live. Okay. So this is a sharing circle. The difference between a sharing circle and a talking circle is that in a talking circle, it is a closed container with confidentiality. And of course, this is public. So this is a sharing circle. And if anyone wants to change anything to those guidelines, we share it with each other and everyone consents to agree to modify that. So here we are. And I want to invite this togetherness to become whatever its natural form is, with the coherence of all of us presencing each other and coming together in our hearts. So it may be individual shares, it may become a dialogue. There may be questions, or the shares might be completely unrelated to each other. Any of those formats is welcome.
I just want to say to the guidelines that it means not to mention anyone in criticism or judgmental or saying anything negative. If you want to mention someone in a good way, then that is very acceptable. Okay. Just be mindful and respectful for yourself, your other selves here in the circle and beyond. Ourselves.
Thank you. I'd like to start actually. My heart feels heavy and full at the same time. And there's a really, I feel so honored to have witnessed and been included in the ceremony today. Uncle Ed, I know I've mentioned it multiple times. I feel the togetherness of our group, despite distance and Zoom. And I hear the ache of those who are holding lineage and it not getting passed on, or maybe there being, like a feeling of how is this river of light going to continue in the ways that it did in the past from generation to generation. I've heard multiple people or cultures mentioning this. And as someone kind of in the first half of life, you could say, it's a really sacred honor for me to be in the presence of those who have made themselves vessels for that which is sacred and timeless, and that which has been carried forth within humanity for so long. And I am in reverence to this process of when a human being and when a community, either way, gives themselves as vessel to protect and be the guardian of and transmit that which is sacred. I don't know how else to say that I deeply respect and deeply honor and what has been here today and in this group in general. And that it really, really very deeply matters to me. And that I take it forward in my heart, in my own practices, in the ways that I am of service. And thank you for the depth and the presence of your heart. I'm glad I deeply receive what you brought forth today. And I carry it forth, I carry it forward within me. Thank you.
Yesterday we invited those who haven't spoken in the gathering yet. So I'm inviting you, and as we said, everyone needs to have a chance to speak at the gathering, which is like a big circle, but you don't have to if you choose not to. But we didn't hear from Te Iaro. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. And Chelsea. And I think, yeah, everyone else we've heard from, so we can then move on to others who feel called. But Tayara or Chelsea, do you want to unmute and maybe share your heart,
If you wish to.
if you wish?
Tēnā tātou. Papa ki kauana ngā tai ki mau ao. E whakaneke hia, e whakanuku hia, e whiua reretia e hoturoa. Wahine rua ki te wai, ki tai wiwi, ki tai wawa, ki te whaiau, ki te amarama o tihei mauri ora. Ka piki whakarunga au ki te tihi taumata o tōku maunga. Ko mau wao e tuana i te ao, i te pō, i te winiwini, i te wanawana. Ka heke aku tirohanga ki te moana motuhake o tauranga, e haerere ana rā ki te wāhapu o te moana nui a ki wai e karanga nei ki tōku waka o māta atua. Haere ki tai, hoki ki uta. Hoki ki te mana whenua e ki anei ko te whānau tauwhao. Ka rere atu taku manawa ki te mautere rangatira o Rangiwaia. E tiaki ana i tōku marae a Rangiwaia. Kei reira e takotohi ana ngā wairua o Kutupuna. No reira, he wahine, he whenua ka ngaro ai te tangata. Ko tai aro tai katoa tōku ingoa. No reira, te hei mauri ora. Kia ora i te whānau. My name is Taiaro. That's pronounced Te-a-ro, so you really pronounced it beautifully, thank you. It's never usually the case. Before I sort of go to reintroduce myself, and perhaps my sharing is just letting you all know what my introduction was and what I'm acknowledging in this space. So my name is Taiaro. I am currently in Aotearoa, aka New Zealand. So I am a Māori, and yeah, I'm still kind of understanding this space right now, so I'm just feeling into the energy, into how I'm feeling and what it is that I want to share. But just what is calling to me is just an acknowledgement of my ancestors and of all of your ancestors, and I just like, we're currently in lockdown at the moment, so just how in my experience with just connecting is returning back to the homelands of my ancestors, and just acknowledging that I can't do that right now, and so just wanting to share that, just a connection to the mountains that my ancestors come from, and the awa, the stream, and all of the water, just so that I can still be there, a wairua, or spiritually. So thank you for opening this space, and thank you very much for allowing a circle where we can all connect wherever we are in space. So no reira, huri noa, tēnā koutou, o tira, kia ora hui mai tātou katoa.
Thank you.
And Chelsea wrote in the chat box, you can see. Chelsea, if you later feel that you can speak or want to speak, then please put it in the chat box and over to Olivia, and she will invite you.
And just to let everyone know, in terms of my facilitation style, I really am allowing the pregnant silence to be the one inviting us forth. So I won't be interjecting much. So together we are being carried. And when the spirit moves us to verbalize that, I trust whoever wishes to unmute to go ahead and share what's present.
So I want to ask, given the conversation we had yesterday with the question of the younger generations and also the language that we use, which is very cisgender, it's very men, women, masculine, feminine, could be too binary for many of the young people, feeling that there's a whole range. And given what I think Ia was sharing at some point about how important it is to speak, like I was asking people to say thank you in their mother tongue, because I find when we speak a language that even if we get it wrong, if we make the effort, people appreciate it when we try to speak in a language that brings them closer. And so I kind of want to bring the question of how to speak about even masculine and feminine in a way that would be inclusive and would not exclude people that feel that this is different for them. I can tell you I'm Jewish, I come from Israel, we speak Hebrew. Hebrew, one of our poets said, is sex maniac language. Everything has a gender. Wall, table, everything has a gender in Hebrew. So like when I was translating Kuyach's video, which is how we met, when he says the old Kuyach was looking for the child to be the next Kuyach, I had to ask, a boy child or a girl child, because in Hebrew you can't say both in one word. So for me, I've had people think that I was masculine and treat me as a man, and I found it funny. But I can see, and the more I meet young people, it's important to, I see how when I manage to get the right pronouns in English, which is a struggle for me, because again, my mindset and not my mother tongue. But when I manage it, I feel there's an opening there. So I'm kind of asking it to everybody, to the younger generations, and also the non-binarics here, and also to the elders. How can we speak in a language that would be more inclusive to that?
I can speak. Yeah. Oh, wow. You're asking that on it's the last day of the week of transgender awareness week. It's the day of remembering the trans people who have been murdered. It's a very emotional day. There's vigils happening all over right now. Wow, my heart is pounding just thinking of it, because it's very scary to be someone who resists the gender categories that were given, handed down by the generations before. Know that many youth are struggling right now. And just acknowledging that it's okay to be resisting, especially by using pronouns. Significantly reduces the chance of the youth wanting to leave this realm. It seems maybe small for someone who doesn't understand or who's confused by that desire, or that existing in between, the in-betweenness of non-binary existence. But it's profound to be told that you can exist when most of the world says that you can't exist, and will even bring violence against you if you try. My mother and I have had long struggles about this because she didn't understand for a long time and said, well, I birthed a girl. that's I birthed the girl. So I said, yes, but it's not who I am. I'm trying to tell you who I am. And she's finally coming to understand. And I'm really very lucky and grateful for that. Because many people like me don't get that from their families, and they end up seeking out new family, or living on the street, or just not existing anymore at all. So I think with my mother, it was really helpful when she said, okay, I'm going to try. I'll try to use the pronouns. And then she'd use them with me and then not with her friends. I said, no. It's not just something you do to honor or respect me when you're talking to me. It's acknowledging to the world that I exist in this way. So having those conversations with other people and sitting in the discomfort of it, of the not knowing, and being in the in-betweenness with us. Because it's part of the old paradigm, the colonial paradigm falling apart and the language not working anymore, so that we can find the new language and a new way forward together. Thanks for asking.
So thank you for sharing. A small follow-up question. Can I say Liberty said they is going to join us tomorrow? Like, what do I do with the is are? That's where I really get lost. Because then people think you're a group of people. So
You might.
how does it work? Teach us.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I teach a whole class on this. People hire me to come into their workplace to teach this because, yeah, it's I want to propose to you that you already speak in this way. You already use they as a singular when you don't know a person's gender. And you'll start to notice yourself doing it. It's unconscious now, but we do speak with the singular they. So that's my first challenge to you, is just notice. When I don't identify the gender of my partner, for example, I'll be maybe talking to somebody, I'm buying something on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm saying, oh, my partner will come pick it up. And they say, okay, when will they be here? What kind of car do they drive? And these, are people that don't maybe have any idea about pronouns, but it's part of how we use English now. And it's when we start thinking about it, say, oh, okay, now it's a gender thing, and they're different, and we get in our head about it. That's when we start to get confused about how to use the language. I hope that answered your question. It's an 1.5 hour long class if you want to join me someday.
I'm really confused, I'm not really sure what even we're talking about. I've heard about this pronoun thing, and so maybe you can explain a little better that I can really grasp from the beginning, because I just don't have a clue about how it, I guess, how it feels bad the way that it is, and how it needs to be different. What that means. Is it, I don't know. I think I'm looking at things in a way that I don't see those. So when you're talking about they, what does that mean? Is that like offensive, or is it hurtful? I'm not sure. Is it a failure of acknowledgement?
Well, for example, Ed, when we say, you know, a women's circle, then it's excluding men. But then what about people who feel they are both or they are none? Where do they fit? So when men pray together, maybe they don't fit there because they're not exactly a man. When women get together, maybe they don't fit there because what if they feel different, or what if they feel both? I was at a women's circle, and someone showed up with a beard, and she said, because she feels she's a she, and she said, I wasn't sure you're going to accept me. And it was a question. There was some women that a beard reminds them of someone who offended them in a very bad way. And so how do we negotiate this? And I understand that in some indigenous cultures, it's called two-spirit people, or some of the range. Again, I'm not entirely familiar with everything. This is why I'm asking, because I feel sometimes I step on people's toes when I don't intend to.
I'll answer the question just to diffuse kind of, we're all of us kind of doing a little bit of the, anyway, the pronoun thing, Uncle Ed, just that we all got on the same page. So what Liberty was explaining, is that okay that I'm going? Okay. Is when someone who identifies with if I'm in a female body and I identify as a woman, then I am cisgender, and I would most probably feel comfortable being called she, right? And the same way with the reverse, with the masculine. If I am in a female body, that is my biological sex, but my gender identity, the way that I feel, if that doesn't correlate, if there's a sense of maybe alienation with myself or feeling different from what the culture says a she is, then there is that feeling of what Liberty was calling this in-between space, where it's neither this nor that, based on what the culture, whichever culture we're in, is ascribing, how they're ascribing identity to what it means to be a she or what it means to be a he. And so an alternative that in the English language, and I would say especially more recently, that has been gaining kind of more public use more and more, is to choose the pronoun they as a way of being able to exist or be called something that feels better. So it's not a negative term, it's a positive term, and it's something that each person chooses their pronouns for themselves. So then we ask the other person, what are your pronouns? And that way, what we're asking them is we're giving them the opportunity to tell us what their gender identity is, rather than us assuming that their gender is the same as their biological sex. And so that way there's, rather than an implicit assumption, there is an opportunity of, will you share who you are with me, rather than me impose based on maybe what I'm visually seeing or what I'm assuming culturally feels to you as your identity. And so one way that that's been happening in our culture is the use of the pronoun they is a way of being able to give ourselves space to exist in an identity that's culturally understood to be beyond the binary of what a woman is seen as or what a man is seen as. So it opens up a range where there doesn't need to be a definition of what the identity of if you were to use the pronoun they, there doesn't need to be a fixed definition of what that is, right? In the way that she or he have very fixed cultural definitions, there's the opportunity for possibility there. So that's a way that the language is being used to open up cultural concepts so that people can come forth in authenticity with self-expression and with each of our uniqueness of however it is that we want to come forth rather than the culture defining the individual.
Okay, now I understand. Just déjalo así. Mhm. Sí. Okay, yeah, that really was helpful. That was really helpful because I didn't have a clue. And probably because I just never really even thought about it. I only think about an individual and not really even that being of a concern to me of how how they are. They are who they are, right? They are who they are, and so I just need to love them, right? And so, in some respects, if people feel like maybe they're not understood or won't be accepted, I've always tried to step sideways from that and accept people, no matter how they are, because we need to create an avenue for people to be comfortable in their own skin, as you heard so many of the elders talking about, to be who you are and to find that. And so this is helpful in that it enlightens me as to the sensitivity of people that are in the condition. And one of the things we say about in the Lakota way, Lakotas are some real jokers, right? And so we always tell people when you first start coming around ceremony, don't show up with a thin skin, okay? Because people just don't get hurt by the stuff because people are just joking, in one way or the other, or so you gotta toughen up your skin, is the way we say. Just don't take everything so personal. Lighten up, and so that maybe is the way that I look at it, and this kind of really helps me to understand that people are very, very sensitive in this regard, and I'm probably guilty too of you say he or she, or I just don't realize like you're saying, a biological male or female may not be the spirits, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. So thank you for explaining that. Now I can understand a little bit better. So as not to be offensive inadvertently to people who may be extremely sensitive, and that was something that was on my mind when I was doing the ceremony, right? Because there's just so many different cultures, and so something that I'm doing could certainly be offensive to someone else in my ceremony or in my song or in the way that I do things. And so it was of a concern to me, but at the same time, I have to realize I need to be who I am. And if it hurts them, I need to apologize in advance because I'm not trying to do that. And I realize perception is reality, right? And so however you perceived it, that's your reality. And so I need to accept that too, your reality. So thank you very much for explaining that. That brings my awareness level up higher, because I was just really confused about what the tension around it was. And so thank you.
Yeah, please.
I have to raise my hand because sometimes I think I sit at the head of the classroom. As a student, I always love to sit in the front row of the classroom. So I was blamed for Miss Know-It-All. I don't know all, but I just sense. And one of the things I love is this conversation. And I think the universe was either good to me, played a trick on me because it gave me two transgender children, grandchildren. And I saw them as children and I saw what the parents were doing. And I tried to do the not spoken, but to warn the children who was there by saying that I hear you, I see you, and I need you to know that you don't need to grow up to convince your father that you anything. You just need to be who you are. This is my grandson I'm talking to. He's graduating from junior high, and the parents are acting right. They don't see nothing. And I'm seeing this person that loves to put on an apron and cook and love to hang out with the girls and have girl conversations. And I'm looking at him being branded and not knowing how to deal with it. And I didn't know how deep it ran, but I just sensed how do I drop a seed to say, I see you, and as you move forward from this place, because he's an adolescent, this is the expression, everything is coming, is blooming, right? And so what do I do with all of this shift and changes in my body? Is there anyone for me to talk to? How do I play this? So actually he goes through this and he's very intelligent, very smart, creative human being. And he made it to the university, and that's when he really got really difficult. Because he was choosing a more feminine approach to his academic studies. And that's when his parents just lost it. His father, I didn't know the father was an Archie bunker until the child came to me, because I didn't know how much he suffered. So here he was, 21 years of age, just at that. And he's like really having a psychotic break. And my granddaughter called me and said, Nana, I don't know if you know, Daniel, my grandson is having a problem. I think he needs to come to you. So I sent out a call and said, I'm calling you, come to me. So he comes and he's, So we sat for 2 or 3 days and we danced around while we were there. Why are you here? And he started dancing again. And I said, why are you here? You can tell me. So he started talking about it. And then it just that talking, having someone who see me, that I really can talk about this. Is it okay for me to have this expression? Yes, it's okay. Let me see. Let me help you to walk through that. And so it didn't make it easy, but it gave permission. Permission to embody that and explore what is it, how is it speaking to you? What is the expression of that? And so now my conflict with this particular grandson, now he says he takes on names and I'm like, you have to understand, I am your grandmother. So I don't know how to calibrate all of these names because now you got a trans name. And so he said, could you call me this? And I'm like, that's too many changes for me. Can we just honor where you are and I not try to say all of these names? And so that's what my difficult one. And then the other one is still working with, because it's like we don't want to acknowledge who's in front of us. We don't want to acknowledge what's there. And one of the things that I learned in my indigenous studies and going back through different cultures, especially in West African culture, there is always the place for that expression. There's a culture recognition, especially in the Daga people's culture. The gatekeepers, they are recognized as the gatekeepers, that they have a place in the culture. And say, for example, if I'm a woman, I'm having a problem with my husband, I would go talk to a woman about that problem, and vice versa. The man goes talk to the, is vice versa. Like instead of going talking to a woman about my problem, I go talk to a male about my problem, because he's a two-folded process who's going to understand what's going on with me in that relationship, and it'd be vice versa. So these elements serve the community, and they not exploited in the way that they are in the Western culture. They have a place in the culture, and it's not something made big, it's accepted. And sometime at the threshold of birthing, the elders that are intact will recognize that person as coming in as the twin spirit, and will guide it in its medicine that it's carrying through those initiatory steps that it would take in the culture and become this expression. And like one of my elders said, he said, we don't get all bogged down in that nitty gritty. What do they do? We're not concerned about what they do with the person's life. We accept them as part of this community. And so I think it's in our Western culture that we have more that conflict back and forth, where we've been religionized through Christianity and colonized through those lenses. I think on that side, if we pay attention, and I have heard it also in some of the Native American cultures, how they acknowledge. I don't know about Lakota, but I have some sisters who talk about it, and they don't have that problem. And I actually, my international sister from the Four Winds, they have a number of different ways that they identify gender in their culture. So I think it's two ways that we're learning. Again, I think we're learning how to, probably if I come back in 50 years, we're going to have a language, maybe. I don't know. That's the way I see it. If we look at culture, it continues to do this. Culture to me is alive. It's always shifting its lenses. And we are the ones that are stuck, as opposed to allowing for this lens to shift in an opportunity to embody. So how do I call myself? I call myself an androgynous being. Why? Because in my initiation, I was recognized as carrying both the masculine and feminine part of that spiritual expression. And in the Yoruba, it's Olokun and Yemaya is the mother, and two is male, female. So you become this androgynous being, and you express in both energies simultaneously. And you learn how to dance with them in your life. So I think that it's many, many folded. I don't know that it's one answer, but that's how I see addressing that in my life, is understanding that even, it's like we say to honor, I always say, who they? When people say they, who they? I want to know, who are we talking about? Because I've been a they all my life, who they, who they. So it's like, yeah, thank you for listening. So I think it's our learning and not being so critical, not even hard on ourselves, but actually just this melting. And I so appreciate, because a young boy was killed here, and I didn't know this was a recognition day. On a church step, a young man, they murdered him. On a church step, 14-year-old boy, just coming into his expression. So I think this is our opportunity to create justice and compassion and harmony in taking ourselves forward. At least that's what I feel I hold as the elder standing here, to help us to hold that bigger vision for ourselves. Thank you guys for bringing this forth. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, will you share a bit more when you shared about Olokun and Yemanya? Will you share more about Olokun? I just I'm curious about what you mentioned about the androgyny from this spirit level.
Well, we create all of these what we call the mermaid and all of that. But in the African culture, Olokun is that underlayer of expression. It's like you have the dark, and you have the masculine. So there's one, if you watch the movement, there's an expression, there's an internal and there's an external. The Olokun is that masculine forward. The masculine always is here, expressed in this way. And the feminine goes in and come back out and complement that phase that we call masculine feminine. And so we said, this is how these two energies move, dark, light and dark. They're not separate. They're kin, they inform in each other. And so Olokun informs Yemaya how to move through certain parts of our energy as we're going from the spiritual level. How to go to that deeper layer. How to force, it's almost like you forcing to go deeper into that space. So that's how, when I'm talking about Olokun and Yemaya energy, that's how I experience that and play with those energies in my life. I don't know if that helps you any. I can't give it a physical, I can't, it's sometimes things that are expressed in that lens, I can't make it physical. It's just a playing with the energies.
It's great. You're doing great.
So
However you express it, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would really love to share a whakaaro or a perspective. Just for me, so in New Zealand, we're really trying to revitalise our reo Māori, so just our Māori languages. We're just currently in the process of bringing that back to life. And in that process, you see, it's like through the language that we use changes how I see the world now, just through the depth of each word, all of our words, and where the lineage of the words as well. And so there's just a lot of depth in the language that we use. And speaking to the topic of gender, for example, we don't have a he or a she, we have a ia. And I think that's common in a few different Indigenous languages. And so it's like acknowledging that, ia is both female, both male. And so we don't actually have a he or she, we have, the tāne and wahine just to reflect the biological makeup of someone. But how we refer to them is just very neutral. And so another kupu is ira, which is like essence, the essence of something. And so, for example, femininity would be ira wahine, just the essence of a wahine. And there's a as there are different umbrellas, I suppose, there's a word that we describe those who fly between each essence, which is irarere, just you flying between each of the essences. So today I might feel into the space that I'm in right now, and how I just feeling in what's needed. How do I serve? How do I serve in the space? And then just tapping into each of the essence. And so that's I'd like to express myself as just being whatever the space and time needs of me. And so just flying between those. So that's my truth. That's a truth of mine. And I truly believe that. Before we even come into this realm, we come carrying the essence of the space that we're going to be coming into. So, there's big families within our culture, and sometimes we have had families where there'll be 4 girls, and then the 5th would be born in a female body, but takes on the essence of a masculine to balance out the space. And so I think that that's how I like to see it, at least, is that we are who we are, and that has been given to us before we've even arrived here. So I'm just, if that's of any help, or another perspective, perhaps. Kia ora. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to offer one more aspect, that the body, the biology is not so cut and dry between a female and a male body. And I think a lot of people don't know that because the Western medical system is very afraid of that in-between space. And so when babies are born, these days, if they don't present with a clear one or the other, they get a surgery to make them one or the other. And there's a lot of factors that make up our bodies that go into the presentation of how we appear, whether it's chromosomes or hormones or the spirit that's expressing itself through the body can look so different. But that's, that conversation is kept in the shadow. It's scary for, and I think maybe dangerous to the, I'm not finding the words right now, but it's scary for some people. I'll just say it's scary for some people to think about being in between and not being a man or a woman, because it opens up lots of other questions. And for some, it's just easier and feels safer, better to have a clear definition. This is how it is. I don't have to worry about anything outside of that. Makes it makes relating to people easier, because I just can assume you're this is your experience. But it's so limiting because, like, and how do I say her name? Tairo?
Perfect. Tairo.
Tairo. There's so many ways to be with, I'm even hesitant to say the word gender because it's an English word. And in these different cultural expressions, it's not a relationship to gender, it's a relationship to community and how we are in connection to the whole, where we are in relation to the whole, or a role that we play, or an expression or a message that we come with. And it's like the popular English term these days that's become like so wrapped up in academic lingo is gender, but it's kind of misleading. It's my focus of study in my PhD right now, so I have lots of thoughts on this. And struggle with it too. Ooh, 50 Shades of Gender. Kat put in the chat.
Thank you, Kat.
TED Talk. That looks good. Anyway, that's all I have to say. And actually, I want to say thank you, because the invitation to speak about this is a blessing. there aren't many places that aren't queer or like predetermined safe places for queer people to talk about this without the fear of retribution or just being told like you're wrong, which is most places. So thank you for creating such a beautiful heart-centered space to have this conversation. It's a gift, especially today.
I'll put forth a curiosity if anyone wants to pick it up. I feel a hunger for an understanding of non-binary identity from Indigenous cultures that I don't know or that I'm not educated in because the colonizer culture that I was raised in, the Catholic European descent lens was so painful. And I've heard that there are cultures out there that have what you could even call different cosmology. Even in spiritual studies, there are so many lineages that I have felt very deeply confused by. I really mean confused, like really just a lack of clarity, because it's really unclear where kind of like spirit and culture mix. And so sometimes even in those places, there's still like almost like a pressure that I feel, or like a slight, like subtle messaging that I'm messed up. And I would just love to learn about cultures beyond my own. And if anyone here has more like a different cosmology that they live in, or from their culture or whatever. Or just like other, I think I've said enough, other cultural lenses to really rewrite that cosmology that I'm holding still in certain ways. Thank you.
I can speak a little bit about the Lakota way, and as Larry was mentioning about the two spirits, and in the Lakota way, what they call the Winkte are the people with the two spirits, and they were considered very special and holy, and had a special function within the community, within the circle of the Lakota people. And as far as the other side, because I think I seeing there's distinctions, and I'm maybe getting confused on just language, right? Like we were saying in the English language, and we're talking transgender. What I think of is someone who's actually physically changed their gender. Am I incorrect in that, thinking that?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So very broad.
So if someone has not done that, or the doctors have not elected that, or their parents elected that for them, I can certainly relate to how that, is traumatic. And Liberty mentioning, discussions with her mother, and, all of us want to be accepted by especially by our parents, right? We struggle, from the time we're a little kid, and this, I try to remind my older kids now that, you got to stop wanting your kid to be what you want them to be, right? If you have a child or you've adopted a child and you start setting goals for them, objectives for them, and they're always trying to meet those, but then if you keep raising the bar and keep raising the bar and keep raising the bar, and they can never jump over it because you keep raising it on them, and every time they come running and jump over it, you're always hurting them because they're feeling like no matter what they do, that they are not accepted. So I hear and feel that a need for acceptance, and not just by the parents, but by the rest of the community at large, to be part of the community. And so amongst the Lakota, that for the dual spirits, and I think that Tyra just explained that beautifully by explaining the two essences and in the given moment. And that is a wonderful way to express that, so that it becomes understandable to people outside of, something that doesn't pertain to them, right? It's difficult for them to understand because that's not them, right? So when someone is identifying a female as a man, I can't really relate anything to in the Lakota tradition in that regard, because the way that was dealt with, I believe, to the best of my knowledge, was they just did what they did, right? So if a female felt like she was a man when she was hunting, she was doing and that she just did it, right? And so there was nothing really needing to be done separately, because they were already demanding their respect, right? Among men, this is something big, right? Oh, I gotta get my respect, and so that's all this macho stuff we're talking about. So in that regard, they just did what they did. But then those dual spirit had a special spiritual place and were considered very, very powerful people in their ability to move back and forth between those ways. And those were generally, the Winkte were generally men that had a female spirit, but then also in that same group were the dual spirit, for the way that I understand it. And so community acceptance, as our Maori daughter was telling us here, in the language itself is conducive to essence. And so the spiritual essence that comes through the portal, is placed into a physical being, and they as well have a way to express that and not try to suppress that, cause it to become a guilt, a failure, a wrong, as you had said about Western and the European attitude based on a rigid interpretation, and maybe not even truly of Christianity, a rigid interpretation of what was presented to them as Christianity, as opposed to the essence of Christianity, which is what we know. The very, very bottom, love the Lord, Tonkashila, love your Tonkashila, and yourself and your neighbor. So if you end right there, all these other justifications or condemnations as far as a way of being no longer really relate to that. That's not right. See, that's the same as me saying mitaku ye o yasin, or all interrelated. Oh, except for you. Oh, except for that. or no, that only pertains to Lakota. No, you're not at the essence. So you're adding things. This is, as Larry's always saying, this is our brain. This is our brain that's imposing these things on people in a harmful way. And so I want to thank you all for having courage to bring these forward to, again, we're saying, oh, the elders don't need to be. Yes, we do, because I need to hear this. See, this then what I hear, these are what I said earlier when Bill had told me to pour the water for the people. He didn't say, oh, pour the water only for these people, for all people. So when you bring these burdens, your stresses, your suffering, your pain, I need to hear it. And when I hear it and take it in, then those things get sent off to the Sundance tree. And our true Sundancers will offer those things for you. And so I'm really, really grateful that, I'm included in this conversation and an enlightenment of, I won't say the pain so much because I've always been aware of it for so long, but of the growing need for people to feel this acceptance and to no longer live in fear, of violence or any of these other things. And so on my spiritual side, I'm always thinking, this is just so easy because I just need to love you. None of the rest of that matters to me at all. Nothing. Not your color, not your gender, not anything. The only thing that matters to me is your spirit. And if you have two spirits and you come in, and I always relate everything back to the lodge. When you come into the lodge, it's just, my heart just needs to love you and to join with you in the darkness. And this is one of the reasons in our lodge, it's dark. We don't see any of that. There's no color, there's no beauty, there's no ugly, there's no nothing. All you see is black and orange. You only see the stones, the essence of the stones, and they speak to you. And so it's spirit there. And Takashila gathers his spirits as it's pleasing to him. Kindred spirits will find themselves and come together in that way. So I hope that people can open those types of doors in a way that people that are in the situation can feel comfortable, and to know that you are accepted, you are loved, and when people are resistant to that and you feel like they just aren't coming around, you got to cut it loose, you got to let it go, and you got to realize that's their problem. When I was little, or when you pushed my buttons, right? You did all these things, but now I'm free. Okay, so now you have a choice. You have a choice to allow those faults of other people to continue to bother you, molest you, or you can cut it loose and let them own it. Let them own that. And you just own your own heart, your own spirit, and be who you are and love, however that is. Just open yourselves up to others. And I guess that's really all I can say about it, is that I guess I never really understood the depth of the pain that continues to reside, because again, it's always seems if we push these things away, all the problems really are the same. If we can get ourselves out of the way, we can become hollow, we can become useful. And that means letting go of your abusers, letting go of your oppressors, letting go of those things that constantly rip at you. And I know that Grandpa's words here are in many times just words, right? Until you can accomplish that. It's not an easy task, you know, although when you get old like me, it seems like it is. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to speak to you guys and for you teaching me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Libby, we saw your face for a moment. Do you want to share? Care to share?
Thanks. Yeah, I've been called back and forth into other things while this is going on, so I haven't gotten to hear everything everybody has shared. But I just wanted to say that I feel very fortunate because when I was in my 20s, which was a couple weeks ago, I heard a speaker, and Ilarian, you may remember her, Mary Pete, Yupik woman, speaking about the 6 genders in the Yupik nation. And I cannot remember all of them, but I know that some of them had to do with the fact that when somebody dies, the next baby that's born is the portal for their soul for, I believe it was 7 years, and so that was handled in a particular way. But I remember just being so pleased about that. This was a long, long time ago, before it's come to the surface as it has now in the cultural conversation, and just being able to say to people, at least around where I work and live, you know, this isn't a new conversation, right? Like we're talking about, we're trying to get back to something, right? And that's so often true in my life, where, you know, I go back to indigenous knowledge and wisdom as the root foundational human knowledge and wisdom, and we're trying to get back because people knew what they were doing and still do. Anyway, I was just really, I felt very fortunate that that was introduced to me when I was fairly young as a long-standing gender system in this Yupik nation that I could refer to. And so I can't remember the details. And again, maybe Ilarian, maybe you knew Mary or, as well. But just wanted to say again that it's really a return, I think, in many traditions to something people already knew, to get out of the duality thing that we're imposing on everything these days, if that's useful to others. So that's what I wanted to share. Oh, very cool, Liberty. I'm seeing that in the chat.
Yes, Liberty just put information about how there are at least 6 genders in the Jewish tradition, and then a link about it. And well, while we're on the chat topic, I wanted to read to everyone what Chelsea said, since she's needing to type instead of speak because of her son. She said, "Thank you so much, Iya and everyone. It's funny, I didn't realize until the end of Thursday evening's share circle, I wasn't able to attend it all yesterday, that I was part of a small group of people and was invited to speak. I'm on a phone and can't see how many people are in the chat. It's a little overwhelming for me that I have a voice in this circle with all of you who touch me so deeply and feel such a craving to know and be connected with. Please allow my written word to be my introduction at this time. I'm so grateful to be listening to you all. Realizing I have a voice with all of you is incredible medicine for me right now. Thank you, Chelsea." Does anyone want to speak who hasn't spoken yet tonight?
Hi guys, hi again. I just have some stuff coming through. I know I've spoken a couple of times today, but just
You're welcome.
I'm just sitting with just the real focus on gender at this time, and just wanting to acknowledge what you said, Libby, in and around you. We have all different different. Okay, I'll just recollect my thoughts. How you were mentioning, Libby, around, going back to a time before this was, before this became a big, going back to the real Indigenous, real natural way of living. And I feel, because this is still a new journey for me as well, and before I came into the space of awareness, I was really put into a real, physical space, pride, boards and whatnot, and around. So it's like seeing the real, the physical effects of everything in terms of, policies, and I jumped into that before I even knew anything about anything, actually, and really matching that up, which is a real. It feels as though it's a concrete sort of, we're talking definitions, we're talking, physical experience, matching that up with what I feel I have been learning and understanding about gender, and trying to match the past and the present, and how we can find a space that is common ground and a good foundation that we all can really try to navigate together. I feel as what I'm sensing is that there's been a real disconnect between, in terms of knowledge, and in terms of what's been passed down, where that dark space kind of turned everything a little bit. And so what keeps on coming to me is this idea of tapu and noa, which is tapu being the real sacred and noa being the real neutral space. And so just through a perspective, just to also acknowledge you, Olivia, with talking about different cosmologies, an understanding of Indigenous Māori pre-colonization was that we were, this is not new or profound, but we're part of nature, and we're part of the land. And give me a second. Oh, I'm just saying goodbye till I remember. Excuse me. Is just the idea that there's tapu, so there's sacred, and there was noa. There was never an in between. So, for example, we would put food and really physical things into the noa space, into the neutral space, and then we would put celebrations such as death and birth, and just the intensity of the energy would be placed, and so I feel as though at least in my experience, it's not like that. It's all over the show. Something like what you were talking about, Aya. Yeah. Kia ora. With the death on a church step, that is just a real violation. Like with mixing the two of those energies. And so I'm just reflecting on, I wonder if with moving away from that real sacred, and when I'm talking sacred, it's there's a depth to it that I can't speak to in this language. So it's like speaking to that. If we just imagining, I guess I'm reimagining based off my understanding of this. It's like imagining that we only that we were so connected to spirit that we realized that we were spiritual beings before we were anything physical, and how we would use energy, use our biological makeup in a way that maintain balance. Again, going back to space and time, and so it's really. I just wonder if, you know, I guess, yeah, I don't have any expectation of what this would bring to life or anything, but it's just like, I guess I'm just trying to acknowledge the depth of these questions, and how it is really difficult, I think, to find a common understanding and a common ground, and one language for all, when it's like I don't feel that we quite understand the depth of why I'm in my makeup and why we all in our own makeup, and the purpose, you know, just having that real that connection to the other realms be a bit more distant than I feel it was back in the time of my ancestors. And so I apologize if this is sort of sounding a little bit all over the show, or if I've maybe lost you guys.
You did great. Keep going. You're doing good.
So well, that was really just it. And I guess I'm just supposed to just highlight how, yeah, you know, gender, all of these concepts that we have created, it's like trying to look at the foundation upon, you know, about with how it was created, and what does gender even mean, and you know, I'm just acknowledging the complexity of this topic, and how it can go. There's a lot of levels of depth that I'm feeling into at the moment. And also just wanting to let you know that I, not to be disrespectful, I do just have to leave this space right now. And so I would just like to offer a waiata, a song, a chant, just as an offer before I leave the space, as an acknowledgement and a thank you to you all for holding this in love and light.
I need to have some clarity. What's your culture what's your ancestral orientation?
I'm sorry, I can't hear your question.
Ancestry lineage. What is your ancestry?
So my ancestry, it's just a bit of a hard question. I'm Maori, which is the native people of New Zealand, but in terms of ancestry, you know, I won't hear, because again, this is a tapu space, but you know, we pass down lineage, so I can take you back to the sky and to the earth.
I just want to know what country you came. You helped me a lot. I have enough information from that culture, enough to get me in trouble. So I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I just need to connect you to a place. Thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora, kia ora. I really appreciate that. And again, this is my perspective of how I'm interpreting my culture through my journey. So, you know, I'm not going to say this is how all Maori think, and this is a collective. This is what I know and what I've been taught. But just a waiata before I leave this space. Utia te ito o te ara ke kei hea te koma ko e ko ki mai ki ahau. Nō reira, huri noa, tēnā koutou, and I will just quickly take down this information, Olivia, kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, and thank you for holding space. Ka kite te whānau.
I wanted to toss something in there I hope is helpful, maybe. I remember being asked to teach a class once for a group of younger people, I guess you'd say, who were preparing to become counselors for Alaska Native folks here in Alaska. And it was part of a larger endeavor. I just came in for a piece of it. And what I started with when we were talking about them becoming counselors to other people who would bring in their difficulties, right, is that what the dominant culture considers sane and normal has brought us to this point where all life is threatened. And I kind of went through it piece by piece with them, saying, so just be super careful as you enter the Western world's idea of a mental health system, that, you know, we've all internalized some of this stuff of what is quote unquote normal. And a lot of what's considered to be normal is really dangerous for ourselves and the planet. And I sort of put out there the image of the person who's considered healthy and normal and so on in this culture, to which we are all compared on a daily basis by the media, social media, what have you, right? And so most of the people that I know, myself included, who are doing important work, feel weird, right? And sometimes that can be celebrated if you're in the right crowds. Oftentimes you feel bad about it, right? So we have to be, in my mind, super careful. I think one of the functions, for example, of queer oppression is to force people into the gender roles that the dominant culture has established, right? That people, I have always been a very outspoken woman, to put it mildly, and what I will get back often is gay oppression. Not because I'm gay, but because I'm coming out of the role. And that's the way we use to terrorize people back into where they're supposed to be. Men get it even more intensely than women do in the dominant culture, right? If a man steps out of his masculine role and tries to reclaim a large part of his feminine self, he will get smacked really early. Tiny little boys get smacked by gay oppression. What are you, a fag? What are you, a sissy? What are you, a girl? Blah, blah, blah. So my point is, you know, and again, and then there's the non-binary folks trying to navigate all the stuff that comes at them from all sides of this thing. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it's super important in my mind, particularly now when this is a critical time in the journey of the species, and we need community, we need courage, and we need creativity. And creativity generally comes when you break down the status quo, or when you've never been in it, right? Bringing in the awareness of the outsider is usually one of the biggest sources of creativity that we have. So anyway, I just wanted to put out there, sort of call attention that there is a system in place. It's called the mental health system. It can be super helpful if you get the right players inside of that system. They are affirming of all life and all choices and all beings. It can also structurally be super oppressive. Lots of people who are in quote unquote mental health institutions are people who were either fighting back against a system or who didn't fit into that system or who people were trying to make fit into the system. It's not the only thing going on there, I know that. But so just wanting to call attention to questioning whenever we run up against something that says, well, you're not normal. Kind of looking at what where normal's gotten us, I guess. Anyway.
Thank you.
Wenda, you recently joined, and we are doing a sharing circle, and we would like to hear from people who haven't spoken yet. If you feel called to share, you don't have to. But if you do, please unmute and share whatever is in your heart.
I guess I'd have to say what I'm feeling in my heart is a deep gratitude for this gathering and a deep respect for all of those that have the courage to speak and to be a part of this. And I just want to be in this presence. Thank you.
Welcome. Holly.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm just reflecting on one of my ways in general is radical inclusivity. It's kind of one of these things that's kind of in my awareness quite a bit when there's something in me that's resistant to someone or something in someone. And I work it. That's just really what I've been reflecting on as I'm listening to everyone. And I'd say over the last 3 or 4 years, I've was lucky enough to come across someone who's been practicing that for a long time, and I've learned all these skills and ways of viewing the world, so that that allows for this radical inclusivity, and it's been really healing, and it is a difficult process. And what I notice is that even with people within my own family, makes it a little bit more complex. And they're like my biggest teachers in some ways. When there is such a strong resistance to me. I just keep thinking about inclusivity and how I've been given all these opportunities time and time again to learning how to stay in the center and to stay and to kind of to not, it's not, yeah, it's just staying in the center and staying in the heart and kind of energetically including. That's kind of what I'm just sitting here reflecting on as I am listening to everyone speak. And that's what I've been reflecting on in a long time as I'm watching all of the things that are going on in the world right now. And then this is this is a little kind of off subject, but we were talking about youth and social media. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. And I was just listening to this really long podcast about these, the people who are behind the scenes watching, they're kind of like social analysts, and they're like watching this kind of social media, what the effect that it's having, and how it's making things very, very politicized. And my heart right now just is feeling the people who are caught in those waves of and deep suffering of not being seen or not being included or feeling ostracized. It is a very, very tough place to be. And so I'm just feeling that in my heart as well.
Thanks, Holly.
Kat, do you care to share? Kat Haber, if you want to share, please unmute and share your heart with us.
I'm just listening and appreciating the variety of expression this evening. That's all I want to say. I just appreciate the courage and the truth telling and the wisdom. And I know many young people are experiencing and expressing gender fluidity with much greater ease than my generation did. And I respect that exploration, and but it does create a lot of mental angst for many, and I know many are in therapy because they don't feel, some feel unheard and unseen and judged. And I look forward to the day when it is a norm and it is unremarkable. That's all.
Thank you. And Michael or Jenica, would you like to unmute and share?
Also, just reminding everyone that we have about 10 minutes left in the time container. So whoever wishes to continue sharing or to share any closing remarks, we're kind of bringing this harvesting to some kind of integration or completion in the next few minutes. I want to share actually. I feel so held by this group field right now. It feels so tangible. It feels like being bathed in warm water. It feels like being held by a stable ground. It's the feeling of being known and loved, and simplicity and depth, where depth and simplicity are the same thing. And I feel very connected and safe. And like an intuitive sense of belonging. Where everything it just is, and it feels so wonderful. It feels like home. It feels like truly resting, and it has been a beautiful gift to be able to rest into this space tonight and share and receive each of you and feel that one heart. Libby says, hooray. Feeling like each of our uniqueness, and also feeling that shared self of the group itself, like this shared ground of ourselves. I honor that. And I think all of you, and I think us feels like an us. Thank you.
I have a closing share. In feeling into the mental angst, the angst that is being expressed outwardly. It made me think of my father, who spent his whole life in the closet, and I only just recently learned that he is like me, but could never express it outwardly, and still won't. And how, and it may have played a big part in why he couldn't be in my life, since I started to express outwardly as a child. And just that there's that when that angst is not being expressed outwardly, it's being expressed inwardly. And that it's now there's space opening in the culture and the moment for it to come to the surface. This is my interpretation, I guess. For these conversations to happen so that we can all feel included, and not just in terms of gender, but that all of our ceremonies can feel included and seen and honored. Etc. All of us, all of our peoples can feel welcome here. Yeah. Thank you, Wisdom Weavers, for being an important part of that.
I think what I'll offer as a closing piece is that, as you all know, I think, these kinds of conversations are happening everywhere, increasingly. Not everywhere, as in the dominant culture all the time necessarily, but they are really happening in a lot of places. I happen to be tied into any number of them for any number of reasons. And just this week, I feel like I've moved from conversation to conversation to conversation to conversation on Zoom, where people are coming to it with their full hearts, really in an effort to deconstruct a very anti-life reality that we are all having to live within. Coming at it through gender, coming at it through Indigenous work, coming at it through climate justice work, coming at it through psychedelic work, coming at it through all kinds of different things that are going on right now. And that gives me a great deal of hope and heart, is to know that so many people seem to be trying to reach the same place through different portals, where life itself is supported in all of its brilliant diversity. And so we are not alone, of course. There are many among us heading in the same direction. Really great to be with you. I just have to pop off soon.
Thank you, Libby.
I want to say big thank you because Liberty, you say you don't need to think about it, but for me, English is already making me think about words because it's not my mother tongue. So I'm already struggling if I said the right word or I didn't say the right word. Is it they is or they are? All of these things are, and it's funny because I have placed myself in a way that makes me work in language that is not my mother tongue. So it's like I'm dooming myself to make mistakes, which is something I've dreaded my whole life. And now I'm at a place where I'm allowing myself, I think, to make mistakes and to ask questions. And this space has been acceptive here to this. I mean, just being able to ask. And I think understanding that if I make a mistake and I say she or he instead of they or ze, is another form that I've recently came across. So I come from the Jewish culture, the people of the book. We, believe in words. We cling to words. We argue about words. The whole Talmud is about which word is better, which idea is more right. And when I came to Kuyach's culture and then the other cultures that I met through working with him, in his culture, words are considered superfluous and even dangerous. And the first times I saw Native people saying very different truths, contradicting truths, and not getting into a fight about, I'm like, okay, now we're gonna have an argument. No, it was like, I once saw elders from different cultures speaking about the sun and the moon and the earth. And one said, it's like a mother and a father and a child. And the other said, it's like a man with two wives. And then they looked at each other and they said, yes. And I was like, yes? But yes, because the understanding is that words are hardly ever accurate. They are just symbols of a deeper truth that we are trying to connect with these poor vehicles that we have, which is words. But if we listen deeper, and we know that even if I by accident call someone a he and they are a they, if we can see beyond that to what Ed was saying about loving the spirit in the other person rather than you offended me by using the wrong words or if we could go to gibberish, maybe, I don't know, silence, something that would allow us to connect through the heart. And for me, through the womb, I'm like, I don't know how it lands for people, but my big awakening was through my womb. When I gave birth, only then did I realize all kinds of things. And I was like, if that's femininity, because I've been struggling my whole life with, I was like, I'm a human, but just like I have brown skin and that doesn't define me, I have some feminine organs that doesn't define me. But when I gave birth and it became a living truth, this hello, my other self, because my other self just came out of me and became an other, but she was a self a second ago. So I'll forever know this connection. I don't need to imagine it. I don't need to argue about it. I have a knowing, and a knowing in Hebrew is something physical, as deep as the womb, because Adam knew Eve and then she became pregnant. So it's that kind of knowing. But only then did I realize things. So for me, the womb knows how to sync with other wombs, and often with the moon or Mother Nature. I feel she also has a womb. Maybe they also have a womb. Yeah, so I don't mean it in any way as something offensive. I'm just trying to bring my truth, and I wish for us to be able to see that, as Libby was saying, with courage and creativity and care. And I wish that we would be able to allow ourselves to be brave even when we make mistakes, and allow ourselves to forgive, which brings me to the talk of this day, because I think there are wounds, and often when we are wounded, we are wounding or causing wounds to others, and let's find the places that know love and that know the heart and the womb and the connectedness that Olivia was kind of sensing and I think connecting us to. So big gratitude. I was very long, sorry. Thank you. Toda raba raba.
Hey, last chance, anybody? 7:03 Pacific, so if you want to slide in there, go ahead. I'm glad. Any closing words? Anybody else? Holly, anybody? Do we feel complete? Okay. I'd like to take a moment to close with all of us together in our hearts, sending forth blessings to all beings. May all beings feel the togetherness that we feel here tonight. As our hearts in this moment connect in this recognition of our togetherness with all hearts. May all beings know and remember love. May all beings be blessed. Thank you. Ashe, amen. So it is. Thank you so much, everyone, for our togetherness here tonight. Have a good rest. Good night. Blessings. Feel free to unmute and say goodbye if you wish.
And you're welcome to join us for tomorrow. It's the last day of the gathering. It's even more kind of free form than the past few days. It's just like a hangout party, and the elders will come in and out and give us their fruits and seeds for the road. So yeah, it's all on the website. It's actually only the first link. I'm gonna change that there. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Yael, for all your hard work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Much love.